Welcome back to Upside Down Data. We need to talk about XLM. If you're not familiar, XLM is the native token for the Stellar blockchain. And Stellar has actually been around for quite a while. It originally was focused on cross-border payments, but they have expanded their scope to also things like asset tokenization and decentralized finance. And it's a fast blockchain, cheap to use, all of those nice things to have. And as I mentioned, it's been around for a while. It started all the way back in 2014, so it has seen multiple different cycles. And what you'll notice is that the first cycle it had was by far the most explosive. And in some ways, it was somewhat disappointing in the last cycle. It didn't have these vertical rallies like the first one, and it didn't even set a new all-time high, whereas a lot of crypto assets that have been around in the 2017 cycle did go and set new all-time highs. Think things like ADA, Cardano, for example. So now when we're looking at it, the question is, will this time be different from the last cycle? Is it going to be again constrained and not be able to set a new all-time high? Or is this the starting gun, this massive, enormous rally that we saw? Just to quickly put a number on that, we just go ahead and measure from the beginning of this rally up to what has been currently the top of it. Over 600% move to the upside. Absolutely massive. Is it possible that that is something like we saw back here that kicked off this rally, but then we had another leg up that took us higher to new all-time high? Could that happen again? Finally allow XLM to see new all-time high relative to its 2018 peak. So to answer this question of where XLM is right now and where it might be going, I want to look at a few of our models and see what they are saying. So the first model I want to talk about is our short-term upside downside potential indicator, or UDPI. This is a risk model that we have here at the channel. High values mean high risk, low values mean low risk. You see it's done a very good job of identifying these risky periods for XLM, as well as these really great acquisition periods for XLM as well. So when we look where we are right now, if we actually just zoom in, you can see that it actually called this local top perfectly. It basically got up to the highest that it can get on its scale, and that is exactly where XLM, in the short term at least, peaked out. But now we're seeing short-term risk cool off notably. You see they were almost back down to neutral, which would be 0. And this is a great sign for XLM, because what you can see is that you don't tend to be able to rally much further out of these really high risk levels. You're either at the end, like what happened here, you're either at a top, or you're getting near to a top. But then when you let things cool off, let risk reset, that can set the stage for that next leg up. I mean, look here, spike up, cool off, and then that lets you spike up one more time. Now, if this cycle be anything like the 2017-2018 cycle for XLM, we may have just seen that opening gun like we did the last time. Here looks very similar. We might then see risk cool off dramatically, and only once it's gotten, quite a bit lower from where we are right now, maybe then it can set a bottom and then rally back out of that. So no guarantee, right? It could just decide it wants to have its next leg right now, and we could go off to the races, and certainly that is a possibility. The model's already saying there's quite a bit more upside potential that exists now. But also don't be surprised if we see something a little bit more like we saw back here in 2017. Now, not necessarily to say that we have to correct as deeply as we did here, but more just some more consolidation. Let the market digest. Because when you see vertical price action like this, it tends to take the market a while to really digest this. Things have repriced so quickly that there are going to be a lot of people who might decide that they're just going to cash out now. They maybe were kind of thinking about it. They're deciding this to sell. Other people are going to decide, am I going to buy? Is this a level that I think is a good place? Maybe people are waiting for lower. You just have to kind of iron out a lot of that. A lot of people are going to sell. New buyers need to come in, sort itself out. And then eventually you get to a point where the sellers are exhausted. Everyone who is going to sell at this level has. And then new demand can come in and kick it off to the next leg up. And so certainly XLM saw that last time. Don't be shocked if we see it again. Though again, we don't need to necessarily correct deeply like this. It could just be sideways consolidation. But that would still ultimately probably let risk cool off even further. And if we get back down to these deep value zones, that could be a nice reaccumulation point for XLM before another potential leg up. And especially if the crypto bull market continues, which unless some catastrophe happens, remains my base case, at least into the early part of next year, it does seem like that might be the way that things play out. Some amount of consolidation before that next leg up would not be shocking. So I see this cooling off as a good start, but it also seems plausible to me that we have a bit more to go. So not financial advice, you should make your own opinions, but that's what I'm seeing with this model. Now, another model we can look at is our momentum bias indicator, or MBI. So this model cares about momentum, as the name suggests. So in the green would be positive momentum bias, and the red would be negative. And so you'll see that in bull markets, you tend to spend a lot more time in the green than in the red. Bear markets, a lot more time in the red than in the green. And much like the 2017-2018 cycle, we've again seen this massive spike in the MBI like we did here. Just one more thing that looks very similar between these. A massive reemergence of positive momentum bias. Now we might retrace and dip back into the red for a bit, and then you might see that next big move up. And with momentum bias, it's also a thing where extreme levels can mark local tops. We saw it here, we saw it here. This was actually the top here. And then you see these spikes that kind of come back down before the next move up oftentimes. Spikes on momentum can mark that, because really what happens with the market is that it can only sustain extreme momentum for so long. Exuberance, euphoria can only last so long before things need to be digested. Exact same point I was making when talking about the EDPI. And so that's where I think we might be in the cards to see this come down. Not to say that we have to dip into the red as long or as deeply as we did here, or even at all, but come back, let this reset, let the market kind of get more on a level footing again before we can then make that pivot back to the next leg up. Again, exhaust the sellers and then let new demand come in and kick things off once more. So when I look at XLM overall, then what I'm seeing is an asset that has done very well to start off the cycle, but it might need a little bit more time to get to that next leg up. And I do think that if we are going into a full-on bull market, we already seem to be at the beginning of the parabolic phases. If that continues and we really get a full-on alt season like we have in the past, I think it's pretty decent chance here that XLM will finally break above to new all-time highs relative to 2017, 2018. It's not really that far off of it already, and even if we have to correct a little bit more or consolidate, it's not that big of a move to get us there. And so if we do see maybe early next year, Bitcoin rally, and then big alt season kick off after that, that's something that you could then look at to see maybe XLM would be one of the ones to go crazy. And the other thing is, because it started so early here, it really got one of the first altcoins to really go crazy. It could be that once we get to that next alt season, it would be one of the first ones to go again. The market would have already had time to digest things. There may have been some other altcoins that ran a little bit later that got hot, and now they need time to digest. So interest might circle back around. You might see assets like XLM lead the way. Now, there's no guarantees of that, but that's one of the things to watch. I suspect that if we get to that point where XLM has just been doing a whole lot of nothing for a while, it's just been chopping around, correcting a little bit, kind of consolidating, going sideways, a lot of people will just have forgotten about it. Everything moves fast in a crypto bull market. People are just hopping from narrative to narrative. No one will really be talking about XLM in that scenario. And oftentimes in bull markets, the place to look is where no one else is looking. That the thing that's really hot and everyone's talking about, the opportunity is probably mostly gone. But if you're at somewhere where no one's talking about it anymore, that's where opportunity can remain. And so if we were to see that kind of chop around sideways for a while, maybe into January, maybe even later into early of next year, then you could imagine that suddenly it could reawaken and catch people off guard once more. So that's what I'm seeing across these different metrics. Hot in the short term, probably needs some more correcting consolidation, though of course nothing is guaranteed in crypto. It could go crazy tomorrow if it wanted to. But I think my base case is probably some more consolidation and correction, but ultimately that's likely in service of more upside down the road. So not financial advice, you should make your own opinions, but that's what I'm thinking about when I look at XLM right now. So you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us over on X. A lot of updates to our models and more over there. And go to our website, polaritydigital.io, to see live data from our risk models, momentum models, forecast models, etc. over there. Those are accessible to all pro members.